Alright, so in this Stormworks basic video, we're going to continue on with our motor, and we're going to start building for actually making this work as a boat. We're going to put this in a boat, so we'll leave this prop on here. Alright, so we're going to start building our microcontroller. So I have a blank microcontroller, I call it blank. And so we're going to quickly start. We'll do a couple things here, and then we will save more for the next video. So let me make it, I'll make it a 3x3. We'll update it, we'll make sure that's not hitting anything. Yep. Let me label this. And actually, let's do this first. Let's put a seat on there. We'll control everything with a seat. Alright, so we have a seat on there. So let's start. The first thing we want to do is a seat has a composite input. So let's go to logic, let's add a node, let's go to composite input, and let's call it seat. This is going to transfer the button press and the information from the seat to our microcontroller. Alright, now all we want to do is let's start getting this configured so that the so that we can control our engine, so that we have it idle and that we can throttle it up, we can throttle it down. Let's start with that. All right, so we want to start it, throttle up, throttle it down. So let's add 3 nodes. All right, and first node is going to be a starter. So we want on-off output. That's going to output to a starter. We want to have a number. That's going to output to our fuel manifold. And we want to have a number, and we're going to output that to our air manifold. All right, so we're going to start with this. Now this is going to get not necessarily complicated, but we'll get into that in later videos. So these are going to be the 3 basic things we need to get started to actually start our motor. Alright, so I'm going to make the 6 key on my seat start as a start stop. So what I want to do is I want to toggle that 6 key, and when it's on, the engine will always stay on. When I shut it off, the engine is going to shut off. Alright, so pretty simple. So we want to read an on-off. We want to make the number 6 so that it's the 6 key. We want to connect the purple to purple, the red to the starter. Now, we're not going to make it that simple. I'm going to get in there and add some things in a second here. So let's go back to design. Let's add another node. This is an important one. It's going to be a number input for RPS. So we're going to read the RPS of the engine. This is going to do a lot of work for us. All right, so we have RPS now. So if I did this, when I press 6, it's just going to make the starter go forever. And you see this on a lot of very simple early basic builds people do, is you have to manually click the starter on and off. All right, we don't want that. Let's make that automatic. Okay, so we're going to do 2 conditions. When I have the 6 key on and the RPS is below, so at 2 RPS, the engine will start and stay running. So we'll make that a little bit higher than 2 so that if it dips below 2, that the starter will kick on again. All right. So what we need to do is let's go, we'll do less. All right, so if the RPS is less than, and let's put our number in here. Let's say 2.5 RPS. All right, so we'll give it a little bit higher than 2, which is what we need to start an engine. So if our RPS is less than 2.5 and the 6 key is on, the starter goes. So we'll type in and. Right, so the starter is only going to engage if we have these 2 conditions met. If our RPS is below 2.5 and the button is on. If the button's off and it's below 2.5, the starter won't engage. All right. So now that will start our engine, and let's say we stall our engine, it'll automatically restart our engine, so we don't have to worry about restarting it. All right, so pretty basic, pretty simple. Now we're going to use a PID. Now a lot of people tell you a million different ways to get this engine started and running. A PID's going to give you the most control, and I know that they're daunting to start, but they're a really good way to do it. So let's start with a figure of, let's start with 0.5 on the PID. All right, now what are we going to make our PID do? Well, the way I like to control my little boats especially is from the seat, as I increase the throttle with the 1 key, with the 1 button, and I want to decrease the throttle with the 2 button, and when I press the 3 button, I want it to put the engine back in idle so that I can stop moving. So let's put our PID here. All right, so in order to turn a on-off switch like the 1 and 2 key and the 3 key to make it work like a throttle, we need an up-down counter. All right, so let's look at the up-down counter really quick. So one, we have our increment. So for every time I press the up-down counter, it's going to count 1. That's too high. All right, I'm going to make that smaller. Below that's our reset. So when I reset it, when I press this reset node, it's going to bring it to 0. That's going to idle our engine. That's what we want. That's fine. I'm going to enable the clamp. Now I'm going to put in what RPS ranges I want. So I want a minimum, I want to be able to go in reverse with this. So we'll do an auto reverse. I'll show you how that works. Like a real boat, if you put the throttle forwards, we're going to go forwards. If you put the throttle in the middle, we'll be at idle and we won't be moving. If you put the throttle in reverse, it will automatically switch our gear, put us in reverse, and rev up the engine. So we're going to go through all that. So let's make that, we'll make it -8. So that's, we'll show you later why. That's going to allow us to go to 8 RPS in reverse. And let's go 15 in forwards. All right, that's going to allow us to go a maximum of 15 RPS in forwards. Now, as you can see, that's going to, every time we press the button, it's going to go up 1. So it would take us 8 presses to get all the way in reverse. And it's going to take us 15 presses to go all the way forwards. But we actually don't want it that much. We want it, let's go 0.1. Now that's going to take us 80 presses to go in reverse. And it's going to take us 150 presses to go all the way forward. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but we're not going to press the button. We're going to hold the button. So for every tick, it's going to go off 0.1. If we want it to be faster, remember if you have a regular throttle, you can change the sensitivity. That's essentially what that's doing, is it's changing your increment. So let's leave it like this. If we need to change it, we'll change it. All right, now we want to feed this up-down counter. We want to feed our desired RPS. It sounds like we can put it right in the PID. So let's do that. We're going to change it later, but we'll do that to start. So what is this called? This is called our set point. This is the number that I want. I want this certain RPS that I've set. You give it to me. Well, how does it know where to go? Well, it takes the process variable. That goes to RPS. So it's going to take the RPS, and it's going to say, okay, he wants 15 RPS. I only have 6. I need to increase the throttle output to get to 15. Once it gets to 15, it says, hey, I'm at 15. He wants 15. I can reduce the throttle some. And it's going to go back and forth until it gets you where you want. All right, so good. Now let's look at 6 here. The other thing, this turns on our PID. Well, when I turn on my 6, I want my engine to run. So I connect that there. That will start my engine. All right, now I could connect that to the fuel, but I'm not going to yet. I'm going to actually put a clamp in here. So clamp. This is going to set what my max and my minimum are. So I'm going to put a clamp in here. Maximum is 1. I want a maximum throttle of 1, and I want a minimum value. Let's do 0.05. So that's going to set my idle. That's my idle number. That's what I want my engine running at. So we'll see. If the engine stalls, it's too low, we can raise it. If the engine's idling at 4 RPS, well, we want it maybe idling at 3. We can reduce that. So let's take the PID, connect it to the clamp. So if the PID puts out a number of 100, it will give us 1 because that's our max. If it does -1,000, it will only give us 0.05 because that's our minimum. All right, so let's plug that directly into the air. All right, so now with an engine, we want more air than we want fuel. So you can do complex stoichiometry equations, which we will do later. But for very simply right now, what we want to do is we want to take this clamp number, we want to feed it into a function block. And we want to make our function x times 0.49999. All right, that's the number I like to use. You'll see some people say 0.5. That's pretty close. All right, so that's given me, so if my throttle is at 1, that's going to give me 1 air. It's going to go and multiply it by this number, and it's going to give me 0.49999 fuel. All right, good. So now what we need to do is we need to connect these. So let's go to read on-offs. We're going to do booleans. That's another name for these on-offs. I'll do copy them, and I'll paste 3 of them, and we'll connect them. All right, these are going to be our buttons from our seat. So let's actually move this seat, and let's connect our seats. If you can see how I'm doing multiple clicks, that's because I am holding the control key. Control key lets me multiple click. All right, so let's change these. 1 is fine. 1 is going to increase my throttle. 2 is going to decrease my throttle. And 3 is going to idle. it's going to cause my engine to go to 0. All right, so that's if I want to stop, if I want the prop to stop, all that will go to 0. So this is really simple. So this is all we're going to do with this is try to get the engine to run. That's it. All right, so we're going to update this, and we'll start connecting nodes. So let's go to logic. Let's start with composite. We're going to take the seat composite, and we want to go to the seat composite there. We want to go to data. We want to take our RPS from our crankshaft, and we'll plug it into the RPS. We'll take our air. We'll make that go to our air manifold. We're going to take our fuel manifold, and we'll go to our fuel manifold. And then we take our starter. We'll go to a starter. And I think that's it. Yep. So we'll expand this later and put more on. So now the thing is, let's see if this starts. And if it doesn't start, we can tweak some numbers. All right, so let's spawn it in. All right, so the prop's not going to do anything because our clutch, we have no clutch connected yet, but let's just start the engine. All right, so the starter, remember, it needs to fulfill 2 conditions. We need to press the 6 key, and it needs to be below, what was our number? 2.5 RPS. As soon as it goes above 2.5 RPS, the starter will automatically disengage. All right, when I press the 6 key, we'll also turn on that PID. That PID's going to give me a minimum RPS value for idle, and it's going to allow me to go forwards and reverse. So let's press 6. All right, so let's look at what it's doing. All right, so now let's look at tooltips. This is very important. So let's look at there. I can select that. We're getting 2 something RPS, and you can hear it keeps clicking the starter on. We can also take that up, and we can see our air-fuel ratio is good, 13.8, 0.17. Our efficiency is very high. 100% exhaust important. If I didn't connect that exhaust pipe, it would be showing 0. All right, and it shows our temperature. All right, so now the reason why this is doing this is my idle is too low. Remember I said we might have to change that idle because it's too low? All right, so the idle is too low. All right, so this is causing the engine to stall, to shut off because the idle is too low. So let's just double this number. So 0.05 is our lowest throttle setting. Let's make it 0.1. We'll update that. Let's try to start our engine now. Sit in our seat. We'll hit 6. Now you hear how it's having to start it less often, right? So it's actually starting about half as often as it was before. So we're making progress. Let's click on that again. Let's set my idle again. Let's make that a 0.2. We'll update that, spawn it in, and now let's check it. We'll hit 6, and no more starter. Our engine started. All right, so we needed an idle of 0.2 to get this engine to start. All right. All right, so let me actually change my my PID here. Change my PID a little bit. As you see, it's giving me more throttle than I want. I want 0 at the moment. So let's change my PID setting. Let's try a 0.1. All right, let's look at this. Still needs a PID work to do here. Let's actually go to 1. Let's try 1 for right now. All right, so the P value of your PID is, currently it's not reducing my throttle enough. So the P value is going to be your main workhorse here. All right. Let's look at this, see why it keeps revving up our engine. Do 0.5 again. Let's make that 10. Let's just check these PID numbers. All right, so the PID numbers alone are not fixing that. So let's actually just go back to the numbers we had. Now let me play with this 0.2 number. I should be able to lower that a little bit. Let's go back to 0.5 on the PID. We can play with that more. Let's do 0.15. All right, we just want to make sure our engine runs. We don't want it revving up too high. All right, we want a nice low idle. All right, you can hear how it's stalling again. All right, so that's too low of an idle. All right, but it's stalling much slower than it was before. So let's go to, we'll do 0.6. All right, we'll just keep moving this up until we get a nice stable idle. All right, so you see it's stalling, but much less frequently. All right, I'm actually going to increase my PID number a little, see if that will fix it. All right, so we need to increase our, leave the PID where it was, and we'll increase our idle again. All right, so let's do 0.18. Start it. All right, so it's still decreasing. All right, so eventually this will need to kick that starter on again. All right, so let's increase that number again. We'll do 0.9, 1.9. And we'll watch it. And now it's climbing. Okay, so we want that number to stay stable and not climb. So we'll do 0.85. And we'll look at it. All right, so it's climbing slowly. Let's do one more change, and then we'll call it a video. And that has a nice stable engine here. I'm going into really like minute detail on trying to get this engine really, running perfectly. You don't need to go into this much detail that I'm going into, like trying to get the idle set perfectly. So that's decreasing. I'll do one more, make sure we have a stable engine, and then we'll call it a video. All right, let's do point. There we go. All right. All right. Do one more change here. I just want that number to stop decreasing. This is kind of a pedantic type of thing. Me trying to get it to be absolutely perfect. All right, so let's leave it here. So we have this engine up and running pretty well. Let's try to throttle up. So I'm going to hold the 1 key. All right, so I held the 1 key. That works as my throttle. Remember, I have a maximum set of 14. It's going to lose a little bit because the PID's trying to control it. So as you can see, it's got me up around the 15 mark, where was my maximum number. If I press the 3 key, it's going to come back down to idle. As you can see, I've set an idle, and it's slowly slowing the engine back down. I can go back max throttle, holding the 1 key. I think I know what I did. Okay, we made a small mistake that I fix here. Let's look at the seat. The 1 key should be push, not toggle. The 2 key should be push, not toggle. And the 3 key should be push, not toggle. That's why I couldn't rev my engine back up. All right. And let's do a quick run up of the engine. So 6. We're started. No more starter. We're at idle. I'm going to hold the 1 key to increase the throttle. Should get up to a maximum of about 15. See, 14 and change. Perfect. I'm going to start to decrease it with the 2 key. I'm going to decrease it all the way down to idle. And you can see it's getting slower and slower. I'm going to increase it again, all the way max. All right. And now I'm going to press the 3 key, will idle the engine. All right. And now it's set and idle. All right, so that's it for this video. You know, we did a little bit of idle tuning, which took a while, but so we have a motor that's up and running. In the next videos, what we're going to be going through is we'll go through how to work a clutch. We'll add a clutch so we can actually get the prop to turn. And then we'll add a system that is what real boats have, where you put the throttle forwards, it will automatically rev up the engine, automatically engage the clutch, and then turn the prop. Then when you put the throttle to 0, it'll automatically turn the clutch to 0, put the engine at idle. When you bring the throttle all the way back, it's going to automatically rev up the engine, engage the clutch, and put the prop in reverse so that we can go backwards. So that's in the probably next video. And then after that, we'll go into cooling, and we'll go into the alternator. Thanks for watching.